Well, I'll be talking to you about research on overcoming poverty, on overcoming inequalities, through an example of a research project, which is the Included project, Strategies for Inclusion and Social Cohesion in Europe from Education. The Included is the largest scale project in education, in schooling, that has been in the framework program of research in the European Union. Is the unique project of this level of scientific research and most resources in Europe on compulsory schooling, which included pre-primary, primary, secondary, and vocational training at the secondary school level. So this was the level of education we were studying. But the Included was focusing on successful actions. No? We researched successful actions in education to overcome exclusion. So that was the framework. So this is the main objective. So studying which are the successful actions in education to overcome social exclusion, and the main goal is to inform policy. So we find, and from the Europe 2020 strategies, well, this is the Included consortium. We are 15 institutions, research institutions across Europe, and it's been coordinated from our research center in Spain, from CREA. So in the Europe 2020 strategy, we know which are the goals, no? Smart growth, sustainable growth, inclusive growth, and through that, there are several flagship initiatives. You've been having workshops on that, and we have main goals that we have to achieve, no? Like reducing school dropout rates to less than 20% in Europe, or having at least 40% of the population with tertiary education, or having 20 million fewer people at risk of poverty in Europe. So these are big challenges, and what we see in the framework program of research is that there is a huge need for research in the social sciences that provides evidences from research on solutions to reach those goals. So we have a lot of research so far on diagnosis of exclusion. We know the many causes of social exclusion, but we need, Europe strongly needs research that studies solutions to inform social policy. So this is the goal, has been the goal of the Included project, to study successful actions, solutions, evidences to reach, to overcome social exclusion and overcome poverty. So we had already in 2009 a conference that was held in the European Parliament to open a dialogue with different stakeholders, with researchers, policymakers, and also different social actors or end users from the research, to dialogue about those successful actions that had been successful in many schools across Europe in overcoming exclusion. This is one example. So we had members of parliament in the conference, members of governments in member states, and also researchers and end users. And one example, we had people like this man. He was, a pastor, an evangelist pastor from a very poor community in Europe. He is Roma, from the Roma community, and he was explaining how in his community successful actions from the research were implemented, and students who could not read at the age of 5, they were now reading at 5th grade and 6th grade. So this is what the kind of methodology that we use in our Included project, to research on these solutions and then to put them in dialogue with policymakers so they can become policies. From the conference in 2009, there has been already impact on policy. No? After that conference, there were different resolutions, recommendations from the European Commission, from the European Parliament, that came out and were presented in the Parliament or discussed in the Commission from people who attended that conference and that took part in that dialogue that we had. For instance, there has been a recommendation from the European Commission, this was last January 2011, on actions to reduce school dropout. This is one of the goals of the European Union in the European 2020 strategy. So to reduce early school leaving in Europe. So there has been this document from the Commission and already included some of the results of the included project. One of the actions is that the schools work as learning communities, including all the community in order to overcome early school leaving. So this was one of the recommendations. And this has also been recommended by the Council of Europe. And also there was another resolution on the education of the Roma in Europe and also included results from that were presented in the conference from the included project. And also there was another resolution from the European Parliament on the education of immigrant children, and also they were reflecting the results of the included project, for instance, that recommended not to segregate immigrant children from regular classrooms, but instead working with them with more resources in the classroom, no? Inclusive actions in the classroom with the same resources. So these are just some examples of what we are trying to achieve with included projects. So providing evidences of these solutions, of actions that were successful in schools across Europe, and discuss them with different stakeholders, including members of parliament. And so we had in the European Commission has a department on communication and press that usually have press releases, media briefings that they call, on research from the framework program. Usually they never do these media briefings with social sciences. They do it with biochemistry, nanotechnology, but because as one of the director of this office told us, sometimes research in the social sciences is blah, blah, blah. So there is a lot of discourse, but we need real evidences that come from this research so they can inform policy. So we had the only media briefing they had on social sciences was on the included project, and this with many journalists from across Europe, and these were reflected in the more important media in Europe. So as I said, in the field of education, to overcome social exclusion, we need to study successful actions, not actions based on assumptions that this is what is happening in many schools across Europe. Teachers or educational administrators, they implement programs, they implement sometimes policies based on assumptions of some people in different countries, but not on evidences. See, these are some of the evidences that I will not have time to explain them of what works in education. How we did that? The way we proceed in our research is using one approach that is called communicative methodology of research. This was highlighted in the Conference of Science Against Poverty that took place in 2010. The European Commission stressed that in order to study the overcoming of exclusion, overcoming of poverty, we needed to use communicative research perspective.